One night, after the fire had died down and the cabin was wrapped in shadow, Jack sat in his chair with Grace curled at his feet and the pups tangled in sleep beside her. The air felt different, still, but full. Jack reached down, running his fingers through Grace's coat. She leaned into his touch, a quiet hum of contentment vibrating in her throat. "I don't know where you came from," he whispered, "but I'm damn glad you found me." Grace tilted her head up, her amber eyes meeting his. There was no fear in them now, no hesitation, only knowing, acceptance, family. She laid her head on his lap, her entire body at ease in a way it had never been. Jack rested his palm against her ribs, feeling the steady thump of her heart beneath his hand. She was here. She was safe. And so was he. Jack had spent so many years surviving, through fire, loss, loneliness. But Grace had taught him something different, something softer. He hadn't just rescued her. She had rescued him too. In the days that followed, their rhythm deepened. The pups grew into small, bounding shadows, with wagging tails and clumsy love. Grace watched them like a quiet queen, stern when needed, soft when earned. And Jack watched all of it with a kind of reverence he hadn't known he possessed. He wasn't alone anymore. He hadn't been since the night a frozen dog scratched at his door and changed everything. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of lavender and gold, Jack sat on the porch with Grace beside him. Snow and ash played in the yard, their barks echoing through the stillness. Jack took a long breath. "I used to think I'd already lived the best parts of my life," he murmured. Grace looked at him, then nudged his hand. Jack smiled. "Turns out I was just waiting." They sat like that for a long time. No words, no fear, just wind, warmth, and a promise written in the rhythm of a shared breath. Noah was used to roadside diners, coffee that tasted like burnt hope, and towns whose stories had long since curled into dust. An investigative journalist with tired boots and a restless heart, he'd driven past the old gas station before. The dog had always been there, but something about this morning was different, quieter somehow. He slowed, drawn by the stillness that hung around the shepherd like a veil. He parked on the shoulder, engine idling, and stared. Duke didn't flinch, didn't glance his way, just stared down the road, the line of his body taut with patience, like time itself had curled into his spine. Noah reached for his phone and took a photo. Not for work, just something to remember. But even as he lowered the camera, he felt it. A pull. This wasn't just a stray. Inside the diner, the warmth hit him first. Bacon sizzled somewhere out back, and a weathered bell above the door jingled like it hadn't done anything new in 20 years. A few regulars looked up, then returned to their coffee and murmured forecasts of snow. Martha stood behind the counter, wiping a cup with the practiced rhythm of someone who'd served more stories than she could tell. "Coffee?" she asked without looking. "Sure," Noah said, sliding onto a stool. "Can I ask you something?" She met his eyes then. "The dog?" He blinked. "You knew?" Martha smiled faintly. "Everyone does. You're just the latest heart to get caught in it." Noah leaned in. "How long's he been out there?" She poured the coffee, dark and steaming, before answering. 4 years, storms, summers, you name it. He's never left. Just waits. Right there." Noah turned slightly to glance through the window. Duke hadn't moved. "Does anyone know why?" Martha shook her head. "Rumors. Some say he belonged to a trucker. Others think he wandered off and forgot his way back. Me? I think he remembers exactly where he's supposed to be. I think he's waiting for someone who didn't come back." Noah's fingers curled around his cup. He'd written about missing hikers, forgotten soldiers, and letters returned unopened. But this was different. This was love, distilled into stillness. There was a story here, and he was going to find it. Outside, the wind picked up, just enough to stir the corners of a discarded newspaper and tug gently at Duke's fur. Still, he didn't move. The dog's focus never wavered, as if the road might bloom into something familiar at any moment. Noah stepped outside again, the door's bell tinkling behind him. He stood near his car, eyes locked on the figure by the pumps. Who are you really? He wondered. And who are you waiting for? He opened his notes app and typed the basics: date, location, rough description. But facts didn't feel like enough. The story wasn't in what Duke was, it was in what he believed. A few minutes later, Noah returned to his car, opened his laptop and started digging. Dog rescue pages, lost pet registries, local accident reports. He chased one thread after another until something caught his eye: a 4-year-old listing on a now-defunct pet rescue forum. Name: Duke, German Shepherd, missing since car accident on Highway 214. Belongs to Lucas Carter. Family involved in rollover crash. Last seen near accident site. Reward offered. Please help. Noah's pulse quickened. The date matched. The highway matched. And the gas station, he checked, was less than a mile from the crash site. His breath caught in his throat. This wasn't a dog who got lost. This was a dog who had been trying to be found. Noah closed the laptop slowly. He looked up at Duke again. Same position, same patient stillness. But now, with that knowledge, it felt like tragedy wrapped in fur and silence. Noah reached into the back seat for his camera. The light was just right. Soft golden hour hues brushing across the dog's profile. He set up the shot carefully, keeping his distance, and pressed record. "This is Duke," he began, voice low, reverent. "And for 4 years, he has been waiting." He let the camera linger, let the silence speak. Duke blinked slowly, his eyes reflecting the fading light like glass, worn by time. Noah whispered into the mic, "Let's help him find who he's waiting for." Then he uploaded the video, and the world began to notice. The video spread like wind across dry leaves. Noah had posted it with a simple caption: "The dog who never left. 4 years. Same spot, same hope. Let's help him find home." Within hours, it caught fire. On Instagram, people cried in comments. On Facebook, strangers shared it with captions like, "Dogs are better than us," and, "Please, someone find his family." On Twitter, it spiraled. Tens of thousands of retweets, then news accounts, rescue groups, and even verified celebrities chiming in. This broke me. He waited 4 years. Someone find him. I don't cry easily, but this... But Noah wasn't reading the comments. He was watching Duke. He sat in his car, parked across the street with a thermos of diner coffee gone cold. The German Shepherd hadn't moved much. Occasionally, he'd lift his head when a certain type of car passed. A silver SUV, a dark red truck. His ears would rise. Hope would flicker. But then the car would fade, and he'd lower his gaze again. It was agony, and it was sacred. Then, ping. Noah glanced at his phone. Notifications had become a blur by now, but something about this one froze him. The message preview said, "I think I know this dog." He opened it. It came from a woman named Emily Carter. The subject line read, "Please tell me it's him." The message was short, typed with urgency and trembling emotion. "That's our dog. That's Duke. We thought he died in the accident. Please, please tell me he's still there." Noah sat back, stunned. His chest tightened. He read the message again and again. "That's our dog. We thought he was gone. Please tell me he's still there." He looked up. Duke was still there, still waiting, still holding space in the world like a candle left burning in a window. Noah exhaled slowly, opened a reply window, and began to type. Emily, I just saw your message. Duke is still here. He never left. He's been waiting at the same spot for 4 years. He won't go with anyone. It's like he's holding out for something only he remembers. I think that something is you. He hit send. The reply came almost instantly. Where are you? We need to come. Please. We're leaving now. A second later, his phone rang. Noah answered with a voice softer than he expected. Hello? The woman on the other end sounded breathless, her words tumbling over one another. Is it really him? She asked. Is he okay? Noah swallowed. Yes, ma'am. I'm looking at him right now. Silence clung to the line like prayer. Then, a soft, broken sob. We're coming. Oh my God, we're coming. They were in Denver now, 10 hours away. Noah did the math, glanced at the gas station clock. I'll be here, he promised. He's not going anywhere. Emily's voice cracked. Tell him, please tell him we're on our way. Noah looked back at Duke. His ears twitched, his head still pointed down the road, as if he already knew. I think he feels it, Noah said softly. And so, the wait began. Again. But this time, the ending was coming. Noah didn't leave the gas station. He stayed pacing, filming, fielding dozens, then hundreds, of messages. Local residents stopped by. Some brought blankets, others food. Martha arrived with a fresh bowl of water and warm eggs wrapped in foil. She placed the blanket gently on the ground and wiped her eyes. I knew he was waiting for someone. I just didn't know who. Others came too. A trucker who'd passed this route every Thursday for years. A retired vet who remembered trying to approach the dog with treats 3 winters ago. Everyone had a story of Duke. Everyone had a moment where his silence had touched them. But now, they would see him remembered. Noah checked his phone. 4 hours left. He turned to Duke. Just a little longer, buddy. And Duke, faithful, silent Duke, flicked his ears. But he never turned away from the road. Dawn began its slow crawl over the horizon, painting the sky in gentle hues of apricot and rose. The air was crisp, and the gas station lot shimmered faintly with dew. Noah stood, stretching the stiffness from his legs, his eyes still on Duke. The dog hadn't slept, had barely moved, but there was something different now, a tension beneath the stillness, as if Duke could feel the shift in the wind, as if some quiet corner of his soul had heard the whisper. They're coming. Then, headlights. 1 pair. Then 3. A car slowed, gravel crunching beneath the tires as it pulled into the lot. Noah's breath caught. The engine stopped. The door opened. Emily Carter stepped out, her coat wrapped tightly around her, her hands trembling, her eyes scanning, desperate, searching. Benjamin followed, tall and unreadable, but his jaw clenched hard. And then the back door opened, and Lucas stepped out. 14 now. Thinner, taller. But his eyes, the same deep hazel, the same hope. No one spoke. Across the lot, Duke stood, his ears perked, his body stiffened, and for a moment, everything in the world held still. Emily took a step forward. Her voice broke like glass. Duke. The dog didn't move. Lucas stepped forward and knelt. It's me, buddy. Duke's ears twitched, his nose lifted. The scent on the wind had changed. Then, one step, another, and then he ran. Emily cried out as Duke barreled into Lucas, nearly knocking him over. The boy wrapped his arms around him, burying his face in the coarse fur. You waited, he whispered through sobs. You waited for us. Benjamin dropped to his knees beside them, voice shaking. Good boy. Good boy. Emily folded into them all, hands in Duke's fur. her shoulders shaking with joy and guilt, and something too deep to name. Duke made a sound, low and soft, not a bark, not a whimper, a sound of release, of coming home. Noah stood back, tears in his eyes, heart full. The dog who had waited 4 years had finally been found. The drive home was quiet. No music played. No one spoke much. The weight of everything they had lost, and just barely reclaimed, pressed against the silence like fog against glass. Duke lay in the back seat beside Lucas, curled close, his body still tense, but not resisting. Lucas kept one hand on his fur, fingers tracing familiar lines, trying to prove to both of them that this wasn't a dream. Every few minutes he'd whisper something, soft, broken things like, "You're really here," or "I missed you, buddy." Duke didn't wag his tail. He didn't lift his head, but he didn't move away either. And that, for now, was enough. Emily kept glancing at them through the rearview mirror. Her grip on the wheel was tight, her knuckles pale. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times. Reunions in dreams. What-if scenarios in the shower. Ghosts in grocery aisles. But now that Duke was actually here, alive, breathing, she wasn't sure how to hold it. Benjamin said nothing, but his hand rested on her knee, grounding her. They had changed houses after the accident, moved from Wyoming to Denver, trying to start over. But no matter how far they went, they'd left something behind. Now that something was in the back seat. But he wasn't the same, and neither were they. When they pulled into the driveway, the house looked unfamiliar to Duke. He lifted his head slowly, ears flicking, his body tensed. It wasn't the home he remembered. The smells were wrong. The yard was wrong. The light on the porch was too bright. Lucas opened the door and stepped out. "Come on, boy," he said gently, holding the door wide. "We're home." But Duke didn't move. Not right away. He watched, listened. Only when Benjamin crouched beside the car and said in a calm, low voice, "It's okay. You're safe," did Duke shift, slowly, warily. One paw touched the driveway, then another. He walked like the ground might fall apart beneath him. Eyes wide, tail low, every sound a potential danger. 4 years of surviving had taught him how to leave, but he had forgotten how to stay. Inside, everything was too soft, too warm, too bright. The walls smelled of lemon cleaner and cinnamon candles, not of pine needles and rusted metal. The floors were quiet under his paws, no gravel crunching, no wind rattling loose tin sheets. Duke walked in slow, cautious circles around the living room, the couch, the coffee table, the kitchen doorway. He paused by the back door, nose twitching. His body was angled toward it like a compass set to escape. Like part of him still believed he had to go back, had to wait. Lucas watched from the living room rug, sitting cross-legged near the corner where Duke's old dog bed had been set up. "It's yours," he whispered. "Remember this. I know it's not the same one, but I thought maybe you'd still like it." Duke didn't lay down. He paced, he circled, he flinched at the sound of a spoon clinking in the sink. Emily knelt down a few feet away, her hand outstretched. "You're home now," she said softly. He didn't come. Not yet. That night, Duke refused to sleep inside. Lucas tried everything. Blankets near the bed, treats in a trail, even curling up on the floor beside the rug. But Duke settled near the back door, curled into a cautious ball. His ears stayed alert, lifting at every creak, every whisper of wind outside the glass. He was still waiting for something. Maybe he didn't know what. Maybe he didn't trust it wasn't a trick. Lucas lay awake watching him in the dark, heart aching with helplessness. How do you rebuild trust that was shattered by time and silence? How do you make someone believe they're safe when fear has become their only home. He didn't have the answers, so he did the only thing he could. He stayed. And in the stillness, he waited too. The first real shift came quietly. A week had passed since Duke arrived, marked by small routines, meals gently placed in the same spot, voices kept low, and movements never sudden. Lucas continued sleeping on the floor near the back door, keeping a respectful distance. Every morning he woke stiff and sore, but never complained. And then, one cold morning, something changed. Lucas stirred just after sunrise, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. The house was still. The light from the kitchen window spread soft gold across the living room. But the space near the door was empty. His breath caught. He turned his head slowly, scared to move too fast, afraid it might break the moment. There, nestled in the folds of the dog bed, lay Duke, curled, sleeping. His chest rose and fell with deep, peaceful breaths. His body was relaxed, his head tucked beneath his paw. Lucas didn't move, didn't even blink. It was the first time Duke had rested in the house, the first time he had let go, just a little. He reached quietly for his phone and sent a text to his mom upstairs. "Mom, he's sleeping on his bed." Seconds later the reply came, "Don't wake him. Let him feel safe." Lucas put the phone down gently and just watched. It wasn't everything, but it was something. That night, Lucas sat on the couch flipping through an old photo album. Pictures of Duke as a puppy, chewing shoes, running in the yard, belly up under the sun. A soft thud interrupted him. He looked up. Duke stood beside him, staring. Not anxious, not tense, just watching. Lucas didn't speak. He barely breathed. Then, slowly, Duke lowered his head and placed it in Lucas's lap. Tears filled the boy's eyes as he reached down, gently brushing his hand over familiar fur. "You remember me, don't you?" he whispered. Duke let out a slow, deep sigh, and for the first time since coming home, he wagged his tail. Healing, it turned out, didn't look like a single moment of joy. It looked like a series of small, quiet victories. Duke started eating more regularly. He began sleeping inside most nights, sometimes at the foot of Lucas's bed, sometimes curled beneath the kitchen table. His tail, once limp with caution, began to flick with interest when the family came home, or when Lucas laughed too loud. He started following them room to room, not always close, but near enough to listen, to watch. Emily noticed it first. One evening, as she passed him by the couch, she reached down to scratch behind his ears, and he didn't flinch. She smiled quietly and whispered, "Good boy." Still, there were moments when the ghosts returned. Whenever someone opened the back door, Duke would freeze. His ears would stand stiff, his eyes locked on the crack of light, like it was a portal to something he wasn't sure he wanted to face. And each time, Lucas noticed, his parents kept telling him, "It'll take time." Lucas didn't mind the time. What he feared was that one day, Duke might run again, might see an open space, or hear the wrong sound, and be reminded that the world hadn't always been kind. But for now, Duke stayed. One night, Lucas came home from school, dropped his backpack by the door, and was met with a soft tail wag. Duke patted over, leaning just slightly into him, as Lucas scratched gently behind his ears. "You want to go outside?" Lucas asked. Duke tilted his head. Lucas smiled. "Let's try it." They had kept Duke on a leash every time he stepped into the yard, but today felt different. Today, Lucas wanted to see what Duke would choose if he was given the chance. He opened the back door slowly. Duke stood still, sniffing the air. The grass was cold beneath his paws, the sun low in the sky. And then, boom, A sudden sharp pop cracked through the neighborhood air. Fireworks. Duke froze. Lucas's heart sank. Another burst. Louder, closer. In an instant, Duke's body reverted. His ears flattened. Tail dropped. Muscles locked. He turned and bolted. Head low, eyes wild. "No, Duke!" Lucas sprinted after him, panic burning through his chest. Duke shot across the yard toward the open gate, an opening that should have been closed. Lucas cursed under his breath as he ran, lungs burning, shouting, "Wait! Stop!" Duke skidded to the edge of the street. 4 years of fear pulsed through him. 4 years of instinct screamed, "Run!" But then, Lucas's voice broke. "Duke, please, don't go." And Duke looked back. The wind ruffled his fur. Another crack echoed from the distance. But instead of running, Duke turned. 1 step, then 2, and finally, with a soft whimper, he pressed his head into Lucas's chest. Lucas dropped to his knees, arms folding around him tight. "You're home," he whispered. "You're okay." And Duke's tail slowly began to wag. The air was golden and cool the next afternoon. Autumn had begun its gentle descent on the neighborhood. Lucas had just come home from school, backpack slung over one shoulder, cheeks still flushed from biking uphill. He opened the front door, and there Duke was, waiting just inside, tail giving one slow wag. "Hey, buddy," Lucas said, crouching down. "Want to try again?" Duke tilted his head. This time, Lucas made sure the gate was latched. They stepped out together into the backyard, and Duke moved with slow confidence. He sniffed around the base of a tree, nudged a wind chime that swayed lazily on the porch, and trotted toward the garden bed, tail halfway up. Lucas watched every step. It was working. Slowly, gently. Duke was learning trust again. Until it wasn't. Another explosion cracked through the air. Not a firework this time. Someone had dropped a wooden pallet nearby. The slam echoed through the neighborhood. Duke flinched, his tail dropped, his body stiffened, and Lucas watched, frozen, as the shepherd's body shifted, fight-or-flight reflex overtaking weeks of progress. "No," Lucas whispered. "Please, not again." But Duke didn't run. Not this time. He turned sharply, heading toward the house in a low, steady trot. He bypassed the yard and headed straight for the door, pawing at it once before curling into a ball just outside. Lucas followed, his heart thudding with relief and sorrow. Duke wasn't gone, but he wasn't healed either. That night, Duke didn't move from the mat outside the door, even after Lucas opened it, even after Emily brought out his favorite blanket, even after Benjamin came and sat beside him for a full hour in silence. He wasn't shivering, he wasn't whining, but he was elsewhere, drawn back into a place the family couldn't follow. A stretch of highway, cold gravel, a missing boy, a waiting heart. Lucas sat inside by the glass, arms wrapped around his knees, watching through the window. The porch light cast a soft glow across Duke's fur, but it couldn't warm what had retreated inside him. They had come so far, and now, this. Lucas wanted to call him, to open the door again, to beg him to come in, but he didn't. Because love, he realized, wasn't always about calling someone forward. Sometimes it was about sitting back and letting them find their way. Again. So he waited, just as Duke had once waited, and sometime just before midnight, when the house was silent and the stars watched quietly overhead. Duke rose. He stepped forward and nudged the door open. Lucas held his breath as the shepherd walked in, one careful paw, then the next, and curled up beside the couch. No words, no commands, just presence. Lucas slid down beside him, resting a hand on the dog's back. "I'm not going anywhere," he whispered, and Duke, eyes already closing, let out the faintest sound, a breath. Morning light poured into the kitchen like soft honey. Lucas sat at the table, one hand cradling a mug of cocoa, the other idly sketching on a napkin. Outside the window, the yard was still, leaves gently spiraling to the grass. Then came the sound. Quiet, padded steps. A familiar rhythm. Duke entered the room. No hesitation this time. His tail swayed, not high and frantic, but low and steady. His eyes met Lucas's, and there was something new in them. Curiosity. Lucas smiled. "Hey, sleepyhead." Duke moved closer, brushing gently against his leg. And then, to Lucas's quiet surprise, the dog sat down, close, not facing the door, not halfway turned toward an exit, just there, present. "You're staying with me today," Lucas said softly. "No more waiting for someone to come back. You already found them." That afternoon, Lucas grabbed the leash, but didn't clip it on. He held it loosely, just in case, but let Duke follow him freely into the backyard. The shepherd stepped onto the grass, ears twitching. He walked slowly at first, then faster, tail rising with each step. Lucas bent down, scooped up a squeaky ball, and gave it a light toss. Duke watched it bounce, paused. Then he ran, a full-body sprint, a blur of black and tan, a gallop so fluid, so joyful, that Lucas nearly dropped the leash. "Go, boy," he laughed. Duke skidded to the ball, mouth wide, tail spinning behind him like a flag in wind. He didn't pick it up, just stood over it, looking back, panting. Lucas jogged over. "You remembered how to play?" Duke barked, short, sharp, joyful, then took off again. From that day forward, something shifted. Duke began chasing butterflies through the yard. He barked, not in fear, but in excitement, at squirrels darting along the fence. He started eating with appetite, tail wagging as the food bowl hit the floor. And when Lucas called, "Come here, boy," he came, not hesitantly, but with eager steps, like he'd always meant to. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't perfect. Some nights, he still woke panting from dreams. Sometimes a loud noise would make him freeze, but every time, he came back quicker. Each spiral into fear was shorter than the last. Emily watched from the kitchen window as Duke rolled on the grass, legs in the air, tongue lolling sideways in pure bliss. "He's different," she whispered. Benjamin stood beside her, nodding. "He's letting go." Lucas ran across the yard, and Duke chased him, joy painted in every bound of his strong legs. When he caught up, he leapt playfully, paws against Lucas's chest. The boy staggered back laughing, holding on to his friend like he never wanted to let go. "You're a good boy," Lucas whispered into his fur. Duke licked his cheek, tail thrumming. The game continued. Run, pause, leap, circle, until they both collapsed into the grass, breathing hard, heads pressed together. Lucas stared up at the clouds. Duke rested his head on the boy's chest. They didn't need words. Everything important had already been said, in silence. Inside the house, Emily and Benjamin watched from the porch. Her hand found his. "We got him back," she murmured. Benjamin nodded, and this time, his voice didn't break. "Yes, we did." The days began to stack gently, like warm folded blankets. Duke settled into them with a quiet grace, no longer a shadow pacing the edges of rooms, but a presence, soft, steady, and whole. His movements grew looser. His ears, once always alert, now flopped lazily when he lay in the sun. He started following Emily into the kitchen, resting his chin on her feet as she chopped vegetables. At night, he waited by Benjamin's armchair until the man gave his quiet invitation. "Come here, boy," and then curled at his side, just close enough to feel the rhythm of trust returning. But it was with Lucas that Duke was most himself. Each morning, when the boy laced up his shoes for school, Duke sat by the door, tail sweeping side to side in silent farewell. Each afternoon, he was waiting, head in the window, ears perked, long before the sound of the bicycle hit the driveway. It became a rhythm, neither of them questioned. Lucas no longer needed to ask, "Do you want to go outside?" Now, Duke came to the door, tail up, body ready. Sometimes they played fetch. Other days, they just lay in the yard, Lucas tracing shapes in the sky, while Duke sprawled beside him, eyes half closed. But it was the quiet things that spoke the loudest. The way Duke no longer flinched at sudden movement. The way he came when called. The way he turned his back to the door when he slept. One evening, Lucas stood by the window, watching Duke run laps around the garden. His form, a blur of black and tan against the fading sun, was fearless, free. Emily came up behind him. "He doesn't look like the same dog." Lucas smiled. "That's 'cause he's not." "He's better." Lucas shook his head, thinking of the long wait, the cold nights, the silence they had all shared. "Number. He's still Duke." Then he looked back, heart full. He's just finally home. Dinner was over. The dishes clinked softly in the sink as Emily washed, the radio humming an old folk song in the background. Benjamin wiped down the table while Lucas lounged on the rug, flipping through a dog-eared comic book. Duke lay beside him, head on paws, eyes half-lidded, tail brushing lazily across the floor. It was quiet, but not the heavy, aching kind of quiet they'd once known. This was peace, a warmth that filled the house and softened its edges. When Emily stepped out onto the porch to call Duke in from the last walk of the evening, he came immediately, ears perked, tail wagging. No hesitation, no glance toward the road. He didn't look back anymore. At bedtime, Lucas knelt beside him, scratching gently behind his ears. "Good night, buddy," he whispered. Duke closed his eyes, a soft breath leaving him like a released burden. He didn't follow Lucas upstairs, not tonight. He stretched out near the window, the moonlight brushing silver across his back. He was home, not just in body, but in trust, in spirit, in stillness. And when he dreamed, it wasn't of the highway anymore. It was of the backyard and the laughter of a boy and the warmth of a kitchen full of people who never stopped loving him. Even when the world made it look like they were gone, the seasons turned. Leaves drifted down in gold and amber waves. Then came the first snow, soft, silent, clinging to the windows, like a memory of the years they had lost. Duke walked through it with calm steps, nose brushing across the cold surface, tail wagging faintly behind him. He didn't run. He didn't flinch. He paused beneath the old pine tree in the yard, lifted his head, and let snow gather on his fur. Lucas watched from the porch, arms wrapped around his chest. There was something sacred in the way Duke stood there, like he was finally letting the world touch him again. Martha visited that weekend. She stepped out of her old sedan with a paper bag full of homemade biscuits and wore the same warm sweater she always had behind the diner counter. Duke trotted to the porch as she climbed the steps, tail sweeping the boards. "Well, I'll be," she said softly, kneeling down with effort. "You do remember me, don't you?" Duke sniffed her hands, then, slowly, nudged his nose against her shoulder. Martha let out a laugh that cracked a little in the middle. "You waited long enough," she said. "Now you better enjoy every day you've got left. You hear me?" Lucas stood beside her, beaming. He already is. Later that night, as the wind settled and dinner plates were cleared, the family gathered in the living room. Duke curled on the rug in the center, exactly where he belonged. Benjamin reached down to pet him, hand steady, voice low. "He's home." Emily nodded, her eyes gentle. "And he knows it." Lucas leaned back on the couch, Duke's head resting beside his leg. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Because in that moment, surrounded by warmth, laughter, and love, Duke let out one soft breath, closed his eyes, and slept. Not as a ghost of a past life, not as a dog waiting for someone who never came, but as a dog who was finally, completely home.